Welcome to The Explainer. I am absolutely thrilled to have you hanging out with us today. Look, in this explainer, we're going to unpack something incredibly profound, superhuman, and honestly, something that just doesn't get talked about with nearly enough nuance. We are diving deep into the psychology of finding peace in being single. And I want to set the tone right out of the gate here. This is a space for deep empathy and real scientific clarity. So, whether you are fiercely independent, maybe feeling a little bit lost, or honestly, somewhere right in the middle, there is something incredibly validating waiting for you in the data we're about to explore.
So picture this, right? You know the scene. You're at yet another family dinner, you've barely even sat down, and boom, it starts. Your aunt leans in with that super familiar, expectant smile and asks, "So, anyone special?" Suddenly, literally everyone at the table turns to look at you like being single is some kind of complex riddle they need to solve. Or, maybe it's that coworker who does the little sympathetic head tilt and says, "But you're so great. How are you still single?" As if your relationship status is this math problem you just haven't figured out yet. And here's the thing nobody really talks about. That question hits completely differently depending on your age. Like at 25, you probably just laugh it off. By 35, it kind of stings a bit. And by 45, well, you are just so tired of answering it.
All right, let's dive into this. Section 1, the single stigma. Moving right along to Section 2, the marriage happiness myth. Okay, so society has subtly, or sometimes not so subtly, trained us to view being single as this waiting room for the rest of your actual life. But I want to reassure you right now, you aren't too picky. You aren't broken. You are absolutely not a puzzle that needs solving. Let's shift our perspective for a second and look at what the actual science says. There's this researcher, Elliot Kim Kislev, and he spent years tracking thousands of married couples across multiple decades just to measure their overall happiness. And what his longitudinal study found? It totally challenges everything we're taught. Look, there is a clear spike in happiness during the year of marriage. That part is totally real. But notice what happens years later. It drops right back down to the baseline level of happiness those individuals experienced before they even tied the knot. And this happened across the board. At all durations, whether they had kids or no kids, it literally didn't matter. The happiness from marriage is usually just a temporary spike before returning to your baseline. A ring doesn't magically permanently rewrite your baseline of joy.
Which brings us perfectly to Section 3, single at heart. So, if marriage isn't this guaranteed, permanent elevator to eternal happiness, what about the people who actively thrive outside of it? Well, social psychologist DePaulo has actually spent her entire career studying people who flourish outside of marriage, and she coined this incredibly beautiful term for them, single at heart. For these folks, singlehood is not some consolation prize. They aren't just settling because they couldn't find someone. Actually, scratch that, it's way deeper. It's their most authentic and genuinely fulfilling way of living. Being single is about discovering their own unique rhythm. They know exactly what drains them, what calms them, and what gives them the space to breathe. And somewhere along the line, they just decided they absolutely refused to negotiate that piece away just to check off a societal box.
But hey, I want to pause and be deeply honest here with you for a second. If you're listening to this and thinking to yourself, well, I didn't actively choose this, that is completely fine. Not everyone fits neatly into this category. Maybe you just haven't met the right person yet. Maybe life is just doing what life does. Life takes its time, you know? The point isn't that every single person out there is making some grand philosophical statement. Some people are just living their lives figuring it all out as they go, and let me tell you, that is completely 100% valid too.
All right, let's jump into Section 4, autonomy and a loneliness. So whether you fiercely chose singlehood or just kind of stumbled into it, the research points to a really fascinating shared trait among those who are genuinely okay, like not just performing okay for the world, but actually deeply okay. They have built an incredibly powerful relationship with themselves. Psychologists Deci and Ryan call this autonomy. And we aren't talking about the cheesy buzzword version of the word you see on motivational posters. We mean genuine autonomy, the real ability to make choices that actually align with who you are, not who everyone around you thinks you should be. It's all about that genuine internal alignment.
Let's look at what this actually looks like in the real world. Imagine a Saturday morning. You wake up with absolutely no plan. Zero. You eat exactly what you want. Maybe you sit down and read for 3 solid hours because literally nobody is asking you when you'll be done. Then you just drive somewhere with absolutely no destination in mind. Now, some people might look at that list and think, wow, that sounds kind of lonely. But if you have true autonomy, you just call it life. Spending a whole day doing exactly what you want without owing a single explanation to anyone, that isn't selfish. That is what genuine freedom actually looks like.
And that deep need for uncompromised time leads us to this super fascinating concept from psychologist Robert Copeland. He calls it a loneliness. Now, we all know loneliness, right? Craving connection and not having it. But a loneliness is the exact opposite. It's needing solitude, needing quiet, and needing the space to just exist without performing for anyone, but not being able to get it. People who are single often understand this on such a deep level. See, they don't have less love in their lives, they often have way more, spread across deep, intentional, chosen connections like great friends and family. They simply refuse to love carelessly. They'd much rather choose their solitude over handing their heart to someone who treats it like an afterthought.
Let's move on to section 5, peace or armor. Okay, I want to slow down our pacing just for a moment here, because there is a pretty uncomfortable truth that most discussions about singlehood totally gloss over. Everything we've talked about so far sounds beautiful, right? It sounds like strength and knowing exactly what you want. But for some folks, the single experience didn't start with this grand desire for freedom. It actually started with observation. Maybe you were the kid who watched your parents tear each other apart over the dinner table. Or maybe you saw your mom slowly disappear into a marriage that completely consumed her. Or you watched your dad become a total stranger in his own home. And somewhere in that mess, a quiet, hyper-protective thought formed in your childhood mind. I am never going to let that happen to me.
Well, psychologists actually have a name for this protective barrier. Stemming from the brilliant work of researcher John Bowlby, it's called attachment avoidance. And notice that it's a protective pattern, okay? It is not a diagnosis. It usually starts in childhood homes where love came with super heavy conditions, or honestly, maybe didn't come much at all. That thought, I'll never let that happen to me, it protected you for years. It kept you safe. But it also makes you terrified to truly let someone in.
Now check out the stark contrast here. There is a massive, fundamental difference between choosing to be single because you genuinely love your own company and choosing it because you are terrified. One is deeply rooted in joy. The other is rooted in fear. One is pure freedom. The other, it's armor.
So I really want to ask you to deeply consider this distinction for yourself right now. Does your singlehood feel like peace, or does it kind of feel like hiding? And honestly, here's the most important takeaway of this entire explainer. Most days, it might feel like one, and some days it might feel like the other. Feeling both is not contradictory. It's just beautifully, perfectly human.
Which brings us to our final part, section 6. You are already whole.
The absolutely crucial point here is simply noticing these patterns. Noticing is literally the very first step. We aren't trying to fix anything today or solve some big puzzle. If you recognize yourself in the freedom, or hey, if you recognize yourself in the armor, just notice it. Consider this powerful idea. The bravest thing isn't proving it's a choice, it's just being honest about how it really feels. You don't have to perform your independence for anyone ever. You are not a consolation prize. You are absolutely not a rough draft waiting for some partner to come along and edit you into a final version. And I promise you, there is no clock running out on your worth.
I want to wrap up and leave you with this final, incredibly powerful truth today. You are whole right now, exactly as you are. Not because someone else came along and validated it, but because it was always true. Nobody, not your parents, not society, and certainly not that nosy aunt at the dinner table, gets to tell you that your life is somehow missing something. You already know the profound depth your life holds. So as you step away from this explainer today, I'll leave you with this. How will you honor the wholeness that is already within you?